Deep in the tangled bayous of Louisiana, where moss-draped cypress trees rise from black waters and the mist hangs thick across the marsh. By day, these camps are quiet retreats for fishermen, their boats drifting silently across the water, rods casting into dark channels. But by night, the bayou transforms. Shadows twist among the trees. The water ripples without wind. Visitors report figures rising from the water, their faces pale, eyes glowing faintly. Some see lanterns swinging in the fog with no hand to carry them. Others feel cold hands brush their shoulders while they fish alone. And a few swear that the waters themselves shift unnaturally, carrying spirits beneath the surface, watching patiently from the black depths. Tonight, my dear friend, we will step into these haunted waters. We will drift along the canals, peer into cabins suspended above the marsh, and listen to the voices that rise from the bayou at night. We will explore the most haunted bayou fishing camps in Louisiana, where the water is dark, the fog is thick, and the dead still cast their eyes upon the living. So tell me, if you were alone in a bayou fishing camp at midnight, and a pale figure emerged from the water beside your boat, staring silently, would you reach out to see what it is? Or would you row as fast as possible toward the safety of the shore before it notices you? Hello, my dear friend. I am so glad you are here tonight, safe and warm. Because the waters we are about to explore are not for the faint of heart. Louisiana's bayous are legendary for their beauty, wildlife, and hidden corners. But some places carry histories darker than the water is deep. Some fishing camps were built decades ago by settlers. Some were abandoned after tragedy. Some were the site of drownings, disappearances, or accidents that left spirits lingering. And in these camps, the night holds more than mosquitoes and wind. Visitors have reported strange occurrences. They hear footsteps on wooden planks where no one walks. Lanterns appear in cabins or floating over the water, swinging gently with no hand to hold them. Figures appear in the fog, disappearing when approached. Some have felt cold hands brush against their arms, or seen shadowy shapes moving beneath the boat. Others report hearing whispers, distant voices, and faint laughter that seem to follow them across the bayou. The air is thick at night, heavy with humidity, mist, and the weight of memories. Even the water seems alive, rippling without wind, carrying voices and shadows beneath the surface. Some claim to have heard chanting from old fishing huts, or seen figures performing rituals along the banks. Others swear that the fish themselves are restless, leaping from the water as if warning the living to leave. Before we step into these haunted bayou fishing camps together, my friend, I want to ask you something. And I hope you will answer honestly in the comments. If you were alone in a fishing camp at midnight, and you heard your name whispered across the water, would you look to see who is calling? Or would you leave as quickly as possible, hoping the spirits let you go? Take a deep breath. Steady your heartbeat. And let us explore the most haunted bayou fishing camps in Louisiana. Blackwater Landing sits quietly along a remote stretch of bayou, where the water moves slowly beneath gnarled cypress trees. During the day, it is a peaceful fishing camp, where the smell of mud and moss mixes with the faint tang of fish. The air is thick and humid, carrying the distant calls of birds and the rustle of leaves. As night falls, Blackwater Landing transforms. The water becomes glassy and reflective, absorbing moonlight in a way that feels almost unnatural. Figures are said to rise from the water, moving silently along the edges of the bayou. They glide just above the surface, pale and indistinct, disappearing into shadows the moment one tries to focus on them. Visitors often describe a chill running through the air, a sudden awareness that the water itself is alive with hidden movement. Lanterns appear along the docks and near the cabins without any visible source. Their light flickers softly, casting long, wavering shadows across the cabins and the water. The illumination seems to follow travelers, bobbing just out of reach, and then vanishing as if swallowed by the mist that rises from the bayou. It is never clear whether these lights are a guide, a warning, or something else entirely. The sounds of Blackwater Landing at night are as unsettling as the sights. Water slaps quietly against the docks. And the occasional splash seems to come from no discernible direction. Whispers drift across the water, faint and indecipherable, sometimes sounding like the echo of voices from long ago. Travelers often report the sensation of being watched, a presence lingering at the edge of perception, just beyond the reach of light and reason. The bayou itself seems to play with perception. Shadows shift unnaturally, forming shapes that vanish when approached. Figures crouch near the water's edge or drift among the cypress knees, fleeting glimpses that leave the mind questioning reality. Some visitors report feeling the brush of wet, cold fingers against their arms, though they are alone. The experience is immersive, a delicate balance of beauty and unease, where nature and the supernatural appear intertwined. Lanterns and figures are not the only phenomena reported. The air grows heavier at times, carrying an unidentifiable scent, like damp earth mixed with something metallic. Footsteps can be heard along the docks or in the cabins, though no one is present. Sometimes, the gentle lapping of water transforms into a rhythmic, deliberate motion, echoing along the shoreline, creating the impression of a procession moving just beneath the surface. Travelers describe moments when the water seems to respond to them. Ripples form without wind or movement, circling slowly around the docks or cabins. Shadows appear to rise from the water, standing briefly before dissolving into the mist. Lanterns may appear near these figures, their glow highlighting shapes that seem human but distorted, elongated, or blurred. The entire bayou feels alive, as if remembering the countless footsteps, voices, and lives that have passed through over generations. The cabins themselves hold their own mysteries. Doors creak open with no breeze, and windows reflect shapes that do not exist outside. Lanterns flicker inside, illuminating empty rooms. Some visitors claim to have felt eyes upon them, invisible yet present, tracking every movement with quiet patience. The combination of water, fog, and shadow creates a landscape that is both mesmerizing and disquieting, pulling observers into a narrative they cannot fully comprehend. Blackwater Landing is also defined by its silence. The absence of ordinary sound, the lack of wind, the stillness of the water, making footsteps and whispers more pronounced. Visitors report that even their own voices seem muffled or distant, carried away by the thick, humid air. This silence is part of the allure and the fear, giving the bayou an otherworldly quality. A sense that it exists partially outside of time. Some explorers have returned to tell stories of entire sections of the bayou that appear to shift. Docks seem longer, cabins slightly moved, and lanterns appearing where none were before. Figures emerge in these altered spaces, following travelers or watching silently from the water. The subtle changes, combined with the presence of apparitions and lights, leave visitors questioning what is real and what is imagined. And whether Blackwater Landing exists in a dimension that overlaps with the natural world. The experience of Blackwater Landing is intensely personal. No two visitors see the same figures, hear the same whispers, or feel the same presence. Yet all describe the same undeniable sense of being observed and guided. Of moving through a space alive with stories, both seen and unseen. The bayou holds its secrets tightly, revealing them only briefly before they vanish. Leaving behind an echo of something both haunting and compelling. Ultimately, Blackwater Landing is more than a fishing camp on a quiet bayou. It is a place where water, mist, shadow, and history converge to create an atmosphere of mystery and quiet terror. Figures rise from the depths, lanterns appear without hands. And whispers drift across the water, leaving visitors with memories that linger long after they depart. The bayou is a living, breathing presence, an intersection of the natural and the supernatural, a haunting landscape that calls to those who dare to explore its depths. Every journey to Blackwater Landing is unforgettable. The combination of fog, water, lanterns, and figures creates an experience that engages all senses. The bayou teaches caution and curiosity simultaneously, leaving visitors alert to the unseen and attuned to the subtle signs that the place is alive with stories, memories, and presences. Blackwater Landing exists not only in place but in perception, a haunting testament to the power of still water and lingering shadows. Travelers leave with the lingering sense that the bayou has observed them, touched them, and perhaps even guided them along its shores. Every splash, every flicker of light, every whisper in the fog serves as a reminder that Blackwater Landing is not merely a location, but an experience. One where the line between the living and the unseen is as thin and fluid as the water itself. The bayou endures, patient and enigmatic, calling to all who seek its secrets beneath the veil of night. Wittawa's Bayou lies shrouded in mist, its waters dark and still, reflecting the muted glow of the moon. By day, the bayou seems tranquil, a quiet stretch of water winding through thick cypress trees and moss-draped oaks. But as night falls, the ordinary transforms into the uncanny. Pale shapes are seen pacing along the piers, their forms barely distinguishable through the fog. Travelers passing the bayou report a sense of being watched, a prickling awareness that something unseen is observing from the shadows between the trees. Soft crying drifts through the mist, carried by a wind that seems warmer and colder at the same time. It is never loud, never insistent, but it pierces the stillness in a way that draws attention, urging anyone nearby to look toward the piers or the water's edge. Some say the sound is rhythmic, like a heart echoing across the bayou, while others describe it as fragmented, rising and falling without pattern. The piers themselves are weathered and worn, their wood creaking under the weight of invisible footsteps. At times, travelers glimpse figures at the far end, standing motionless, facing the water. Their presence is ghostly, almost translucent, yet they appear to observe the living with an intent that is both patient and unnerving. Even the water seems to respond, rippling gently as if acknowledging their presence, though no breeze stirs. Along the shoreline, cypress knees pierce the surface of the water like jagged teeth. Shadows shift between them, sometimes forming shapes that appear almost human, only to dissolve when approached. Lanterns hung along the piers flicker unexpectedly, as though someone or something passes too close to remain unseen. Observers report the sensation of cold breath against the skin, and the feeling of a presence moving just beyond reach. The fog adds to the disorientation, curling through trees and clinging to the surface of the bayou. The fog thickens near the piers, obscuring details, and making distant objects appear closer than they are. Figures move within this fog with an eerie fluidity, appearing and vanishing without a sound. Occasionally, faint footsteps echo across the wooden planks, but when visitors reach the source, the boards are empty. Some travelers describe seeing reflections in the water that do not match reality. Faces appear briefly in the dark ripples, pale and anguished, rising toward the surface as if the water itself holds memory. When the eyes of these figures meet those of the living, the sensation of weight and scrutiny presses down, leaving a chill that lasts long after the encounter. Even the trees seem alive here. Moss drapes like hair from the limbs, shifting as if moved by unseen hands. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the trunks, and shapes appear to step between them, disappearing behind roots or in the water. Visitors report hearing low murmurs, sometimes resembling names or phrases, faint and distant but unmistakably deliberate. The piers, fog, and water combine to create a liminal space, one where time feels suspended. Visitors report that moments spent here seem longer than they are, and that the bayou itself appears to hold memory. Figures are seen pacing the same paths repeatedly, as though trapped in loops of time, replaying events unknown to the living. Soft cries and whispers blend with the sounds of the bayou at night, of the gentle lapping of water, the occasional splash of a fish, the creaking of old wood. Travelers feel the presence of someone moving just out of sight, and occasionally, the sensation of being gently touched or brushed past. Nothing is aggressive, yet the effect is profoundly unsettling, a persistent awareness that the living are not alone. Those who linger too long often describe the sensation of being followed. Shapes appear just beyond the fog, moving in tandem with visitors' paths along the piers. The cries grow slightly louder, the whispers more insistent, yet when one turns to confront them, the figures are gone, leaving only the fog and the still water in their place. Despite the unease, Widow's Bayou remains a place that draws curiosity. Travelers are compelled to explore the piers, to follow the curves of the shoreline, to peer into the mist that clings to the water. Every step is accompanied by the soft murmurs of unseen watchers, the subtle pressure of eyes upon them, and the knowledge that the bayou holds stories older than any living memory. By the time visitors depart, the bayou has left its mark. The soft crying echoes in their mind. The fog seems to cling to clothing and hair, and the sensation of shadowed figures lingering remains. The piers, water, and trees endure, unchanged yet filled with the presence of the vanished. Widow's Bayou is a place of quiet watchfulness, a spectral landscape where past and present converge, and where travelers leave knowing they have passed through a space alive with memory, shadow, and sorrow. Ashen Cove rests within a dense thicket of cypress trees, their roots curling into the dark, slow-moving water. The camp is quiet, isolated, and shrouded in mist that rises from the river each evening. The fog clings to the ground, weaving between the trees and over the water, obscuring the familiar and giving every shape an ambiguous quality. Shadows stretch long across the banks, and the cypress trunks, draped in hanging moss, create a labyrinthine landscape that makes navigation difficult even in daylight. Travelers often describe a stillness that is almost tangible, a quiet that presses in from all sides, broken only by the occasional ripple in the water or the creak of a leaning tree. Figures appear in the mist. At first, they are vague and fleeting, caught in the corner of vision. Some are glimpsed standing motionless among the trees, others moving slowly along the banks. Observers report that when they turn to face these figures directly, they vanish as if dissolved into the fog. The appearances are not limited to the shoreline, they seem to drift closer, following movements in subtle and untraceable ways. The figures are human in shape but possess an unnatural stillness, a quiet that makes their presence undeniable yet impossible to fully grasp. Visitors feel cold hands brush against them while fishing. Those who stand along the banks or sit in small boats often describe a sudden chill that moves across their skin, accompanied by the sensation of fingers grazing their arms or shoulders. The touch is brief, leaving a lingering awareness of something unseen nearby. Some fishermen describe multiple sensations in succession, as though unseen entities are circling, observing every movement, every ripple of the line. This tactile presence is as unnerving as it is inexplicable, blending the physical and the supernatural in ways that unsettle even the most experienced outdoorsman. The mist itself seems to carry intention. It swirls around the camp, rolling across the water in shifting patterns that obscure and reveal at will. Shapes appear and disappear with the fog, creating the illusion of movement where there may be none. The auditory phenomenon reinforces the visual uncertainty, leaving visitors unsure whether they are witnessing the real or the imagined. Night deepens the atmosphere. As darkness falls, the fog thickens and the cypress trees take on a more oppressive presence. Figures are seen more clearly in the dim light, yet they remain elusive, vanishing upon closer approach. Lanterns, when used, cast long beams into the mist that reveal shapes briefly before they fade back into shadow. The combination of darkness, fog, and water creates a disorienting environment, where distances are hard to judge, and familiar landmarks seem to shift. Travelers describe a sense of being watched continuously, with every movement observed by entities that are invisible yet undeniably present. The air carries an almost electric tension. Even in the absence of visible figures or contact, the environment seems charged with anticipation. Footsteps along the muddy banks are amplified, and sounds of snapping branches or lapping water take on an ominous quality. Some report hearing faint breathing or quiet movements behind them when no one is present. The cypress trees themselves seem alive, bending and groaning as if they too are aware of intrusions into the hollowed space of the cove. This heightened awareness creates a persistent unease that lingers even after leaving the site. Daylight offers little reprieve. Though visibility improves, the phenomena do not entirely dissipate. Figures may still be glimpsed in reflections on the water, or through dense clusters of moss hanging from the cypress limbs. Cold drafts move through the camp for no apparent reason. Subtle whispers sometimes accompany the natural sounds of birds or insects. Visitors often find that the memory of the night's experiences remains vivid. With sensations of unseen presence and partial glimpses of figures continuing to intrude upon thought and perception. Local accounts reinforce the consistency of experiences. People who visit Ashen Cove repeatedly report similar sensations. Fleeting figures, touches from unseen hands, and the haunting presence of the mist itself. The environment seems to operate under a pattern that is invisible yet tangible. Each visitor becomes part of this continuum, a witness to phenomena that are subtle, persistent, and inexplicably real. The cove maintains its power as an immersive space. Every step along its banks, every ripple of water, and every flicker of mist contributes to a narrative of observation and presence. Lanterns, fog, and tactile sensations combine to form a layered experience that is both physical and psychological. Ashen Cove is more than a location, it is a place of heightened awareness, where reality and the supernatural intersect. Visitors depart with lingering impressions. The sensation of being observed. The fleeting touches. And the shifting figures. The cove continues to assert its presence. Not as a threat but as a persistent awareness. That the area itself is alive with motion and attention. Offering each traveler a unique encounter. That is as mysterious as it is immersive. A place where the fog, water and trees tell a story in shadows and whispers. Ashen Cove endures as a corridor of quiet mystery. Its trees, mist, and water provide a landscape where time, perception, and memory overlap. Every visit reveals something new while maintaining the familiar patterns that have made the cove an enigmatic location. Travelers leave transformed by the experience, carrying with them a sense of the cove's vigilance and the persistent presence that inhabits it. This secluded environment remains both a sanctuary and a haunting, a space where unseen observers, fleeting figures, and cold touches shape the narrative of Ashen Cove for all who enter its mist-laden paths. Hollow Reed Camp sits quietly along the edge of a winding river. Its wooden dock stretching into the water like fingers reaching toward the dark. Tall reeds surround the area, swaying gently, though travelers report the movement often seems independent of the wind. The reeds rustle even when the air is still, a soft, whispering sound that can startle anyone walking along the water's edge. Shadowy forms glide silently across the water. Visitors describe seeing figures moving across the surface, gliding as if walking on air. These shapes appear human yet lack distinct features, their outlines blurred and shifting in the dim light. Sometimes they drift alongside the docks, other times they hover among the reeds. When approached, the figures vanish without a trace, leaving behind only the sound of soft ripples in the water. Witnesses often report a chill running down their spine as these apparitions pass, a sensation of unseen eyes observing every movement. Lantern lights flicker along abandoned docks. At night, faint lights appear along the old wooden docks. Lanterns swing gently though no one is present to hold them. Some float above the water, drifting slowly as if guided by invisible hands. casting eerie reflections across the river. Travelers often feel compelled to follow these lights, only to find them flickering away just beyond reach. The glow illuminates twisted shapes in the reeds and dark silhouettes along the banks, adding an unsettling sense of motion where none should exist. The sounds of the camp unsettle all who visit. Beyond the visual phenomena, Hollow Reed Camp carries an auditory presence. The rustling of the reeds, footsteps along empty docks, and the faint lapping of water create an atmosphere that seems alive. Occasionally, whispers can be heard among the reeds, unintelligible yet persistent, carrying the weight of a voice from somewhere just out of reach. These sounds combine with the flickering lights and shadowy forms, producing a disorienting environment where travelers struggle to determine what is real. Patterns emerge among witness accounts. Despite the uniqueness of each encounter, patterns emerge. Figures often glide across the water in the same areas near the docks. Lanterns appear in familiar spots, and rustling reeds precede the appearance of shapes. Footsteps and whispers frequently occur near bends in the river, or among the densest clusters of reeds. These recurring elements suggest a rhythm to the phenomena, a presence that is both consistent and unpredictable, engaging the senses of those who traverse the camp. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences affects visitors profoundly. Some feel cold hands brushing past them despite standing on solid ground. Others report a tightening sensation in the chest, a heightened awareness of every sound and movement. The lingering sense of observation, paired with unpredictable shadows and lights, creates a tension that builds with each step along the docks or through the reeds. Many describe a lasting unease, a memory of the camp that stays with them long after leaving. Interactions feel purposeful and personal. Witnesses frequently describe interactions that seem directed at them. Shadows pause as if watching, lanterns sway in response to movement. Whispers follow closely behind. These experiences leave a strong impression, giving the sensation that the camp itself responds to each visitor. The apparitions, lights, and sounds create encounters that feel intimate and deliberate, as though the environment is aware of every observer passing through Hollow Reed Camp. The river, the reeds, and the old wooden structures contribute to the camp's haunting atmosphere. Moonlight reflects off the surface of the river, casting moving shadows that blend with the apparitions. Even ordinary objects like ropes, dock planks, and reeds seem to take on a life of their own. These natural elements amplify the sense of unease and make the supernatural encounters feel integrated into the landscape. History and memory linger in the camp. Hollow Reed Camp is steeped in history. The abandoned docks and weathered structures suggest a past filled with life, labor, and passage. Some believe the figures and lights are echoes of those who once lived and worked along the river, manifestations of memory lingering in the space. The rustling reeds, the flowing water, and the flickering lights all appear to hold fragments of past events, combining natural and supernatural elements into a persistent presence. Perception challenges reality. Travelers often struggle to distinguish between natural phenomena and the supernatural. Shadows stretch unnaturally, lights move without cause, and figures vanish when approached. The combination of sounds, visual cues, and tactile sensations confounds the senses. Each journey through Hollow Reed Camp is a test of awareness, requiring visitors to confront the unknown, while navigating a space that appears alive with unseen observers. The enduring mystery of Hollow Reed Camp. Hollow Reed Camp remains a place of intrigue and apprehension. Shadowy figures glide across the water, lanterns flicker along abandoned docks, and rustling reeds suggest movement where none exists. The whispers, footsteps, and fleeting shapes leave a lasting impression, drawing travelers back to experience the phenomenon themselves. The camp challenges perception, evokes deep unease, and offers a glimpse into a world where the natural and supernatural converge. Hollow reed camp waits silently. As night deepens, the reeds sway without wind, shadows glide across the water, and lanterns drift along the docks. Hollow reed camp exists as a realm of mystery and observation, where each visitor encounters a story, a haunting memory. A haunting memory, and the persistent sense that the camp itself is alive. Those who enter carry with them the feeling of unseen eyes, lingering whispers, and a landscape that continues to move and breathe long after they have departed. Blood Moon Landing rests on the edge of a still, remote bayou, a place where the water reflects the moon in deep, reddish hues. At night, the surface seems almost alive, glowing faintly as if the water itself holds a secret fire. The banks are lined with gnarled cypress trees, their roots twisting into the dark water, creating shadows that stretch unnaturally across the bayou. A thin mist hovers above the surface, curling and swirling in patterns that appear deliberate, as if the fog itself is watching. Visitors who arrive after sunset report an immediate change in atmosphere. The air grows thick, heavy with moisture, carrying the faint scent of earth and something metallic, almost like rust. Sounds are muted except for the gentle lapping of water, yet every movement feels amplified. Small ripples appear without wind or animal movement. And reflections on the water shift as if something beneath the surface stirs. It is here, under the blood-tinted moon, that figures are said to rise from the water. They emerge silently, gliding along the surface, their outlines faint but unmistakable. Eyes glow from the shadows of the figures, small points of light that pierce the darkness. They linger at the edges of vision, vanishing when approached, only to appear again moments later in a slightly different place. Observers feel the weight of their gaze, cold and unwavering, as though the figures are aware of every movement. Lanterns, sometimes visible, sometimes not, appear along the banks. Travelers report seeing them bobbing along the shore or drifting slowly above the water as if carried by unseen hands. Each lantern illuminates a brief portion of the bayou, revealing shapes that vanish as quickly as they appear. The effect is both mesmerizing and unsettling, drawing the eyes and the mind into a quiet, tense awareness of the unseen. Whispers rise from the water, faint and unintelligible at first, then clear enough to be recognized as names. Visitors feel the words brush against their ears, soft and urgent, calling them closer to the water's edge. The whispers seem to come from every direction at once, carried on a breeze that cannot be felt. Some hear laughter or sighs beneath the words, low and resonant, echoing across the mist and reinforcing the sense of presence in the bayou. The water responds to movement. Ripples form when none should, circling slowly and deliberately around the docks or fallen branches. Shadows on the surface twist and elongate, forming figures that mimic human motion but never fully resolve. Some visitors report feeling cold fingers brush against their arms or shoulders, fleeting touches that vanish when one attempts to turn. Cabins and docks along the landing hold their own mysteries. Doors creak open without wind, boards shift slightly under invisible weight. And reflections in broken windows sometimes show figures that are not present. Lanterns appear inside rooms with no one to hold them, their glow illuminating floors, walls, and the water just outside. Every element of the water, fog, lanterns, and shrouds conspires to create an atmosphere where the ordinary and the supernatural overlap seamlessly. Time seems distorted at Blood Moon Landing. Hours can pass in what feels like minutes. And travelers often find that the path they followed along the water changes subtly. A cabin appears slightly out of place. Or a figure appears in a location where none were seen previously. The bayou adapts, shifting in ways that make visitors question what is real and what exists only in perception. The glow of the blood-red moon adds to the sense of otherworldliness. Its reflection in the water amplifies the presence of figures, making their outlines visible even from a distance. Visitors often describe the moonlight as both beautiful and ominous, bathing the landscape in an eerie, ethereal glow. Every reflection, shadow, and ripple feels charged with intent, as if the bayou itself is alive and aware of every observer. Those who linger report moments of intense focus, where the whispers, figures, and glowing eyes converge, creating an overwhelming sense of attention. The water seems to pulse in time with the heart, each ripple, each glow, and each flicker of a lantern synchronized with the visitor's perception. It is a quiet, unsettling communion between the living and the unseen, leaving a lasting impression of the bayou's hidden vitality. Ultimately, Blood Moon Landing is not merely a location but an experience. Figures rise from the water, eyes glowing like distant fires, lanterns drift without hands. Figures rise from the water, eyes glowing like distant fires, lanterns drift without hands, and whispers call names across the fog. Figures rise from the water, eyes glowing like distant fires, lanterns drift without hands, and whispers call names across the fog. The landscape, mist, and water combine to create a living environment of subtle movements and hidden presences. Figures rise from the water, eyes glowing like distant fires, lanterns drift without hands, and whispers call names across the fog. The landscape, mist, and water combine to create a living environment of subtle movements and hidden presences. Visitors depart with a lingering sense of being observed, touched, and perhaps guided by the unseen. Every visit to Blood Moon Landing is unique, yet all share a common thread, the uncanny awareness of a presence that defies explanation. Figures move silently beneath the blood-red moon. Water glows faintly. Whispers echo along the banks, leaving travelers with memories that linger far beyond the bayou. The landing is patient and enigmatic. A place where the natural and supernatural coexist. Forever watching, forever waiting. Beneath the red glow of the moon. Ironhook Bayou Camp sits quietly along the edge of dark, still waters. By day, it appears abandoned, old fishing tools rusting on weathered piers, and hooks dangling from crooked posts. The air smells of damp earth and stagnant water, heavy with the weight of memories long left behind. As night falls, the bayou transforms. The hooks and old tools, which by day lie motionless, begin to sway gently as if moved by invisible hands. The sound is subtle at first, a faint clinking that echoes over the water. Travelers report the hooks rocking back and forth, not with the wind, but with a rhythm that seems deliberate, measured, as though marking the presence of something unseen. Figures crouch on the piers, their forms barely distinguishable in the dim moonlight. They move slowly, deliberately, as if watching, waiting, yet vanish the instant anyone tries to approach. The wooden planks creak under their invisible weight, and the water lapping below carries the sound farther than it should. Observers often notice ripples appearing in the water where no one stands, suggesting movement just beneath the surface. The atmosphere is thick with tension and anticipation. Lanterns, if hung, flicker and dim as if responding to the presence of these figures. Visitors describe the sensation of eyes following them, shadows moving independently from their source, and an eerie stillness that presses against the skin like a weight. Visitors describe the sensation of eyes following them, shadows moving independently from their source, and an eerie stillness that presses against the skin like a weight. Footsteps echo across the water, soft yet distinct, bouncing off the piers and reflecting through the mist. The sound is unmistakably human, yet when travelers look toward the source, the wooden docks remain empty. Sometimes the echoes seem to move with them, following as they step back toward the shoreline. The water, black and glassy, occasionally shivers, hinting at movement just beneath the surface. Figures appear in fleeting glimpses, crouching near the edge of the piers or peering from behind the cypress knees. They are pale and indistinct, almost blending with the fog that rolls in from the bayou. When a visitor draws near, the forms vanish as though swallowed by the night itself. The shadows they leave behind feel alive, stretching unnaturally across the boards and water, and occasionally seeming to reach out with silent intent. The hooks, tools, and piers are not merely props in this nocturnal theater. Rusted hooks swing in empty air, planks groan under invisible weight, and ropes twist slowly as if something climbs unseen. The camp becomes a space where the ordinary and the supernatural overlap, where the past refuses to remain buried, and where travelers are acutely aware of being watched. The mist enhances the uncertainty, thickening as it drifts over the water and curling around the piers. Figures seem to appear and disappear in the fog with a fluidity that makes them impossible to track. Eyes are glimpsed, pale and reflective, peering from behind the trees or water, vanishing in an instant. The whispers of movement, creaks of boards, and soft splashes of water blend into a symphony of eerie sounds that leave visitors disoriented and unsettled. Some report feeling sudden chills, as if cold hands brush their arms or touch their backs. The experience is subtle yet undeniable, intensifying the sense that the camp is alive with unseen entities. The air itself seems heavier, charged with the weight of memory and lingering presence. The bayou holds these traces like a mirror, reflecting forms and sounds that cannot be explained by daylight logic. Even the water participates in the haunting. Ripples appear in patterns that seem deliberate, moving against the current, forming circles or arcs around empty piers. Shadows appear just beneath the surface, shapes that suggest movement, observation, or intention. Travelers occasionally glimpse a hand or limb vanish into the black depths, leaving no trace. It is as if the bayou itself breathes, aware of intruders and responding in subtle, inescapable ways. Visitors who linger too long often describe a growing sense of compulsion, a feeling of being drawn toward the piers or into the water. Steps toward the shore are met with heavier whispers, a pressure that seems to emanate from the shadows themselves. The haunting is psychological and sensory, a series of cues that create tension, unease, and a persistent awareness of being observed. A series of cues that create tension, unease, and a persistent awareness of being observed. By the time travelers depart, Ironhook Bayou Camp leaves a lasting impression. The feeling of unseen figures crouching in the fog remains vivid. Where motion and stillness coexist. That they have entered a place alive with unseen presence, deliberate and watchful. A setting that is ordinary by day yet transforms into an unsettling landscape by night. And figures appear and vanish. And the water holds memory in its depths. And every element of wood, water, fog, and shadow plays a part in the haunting. And that every night, Ironhook Bayou awakens with the weight of observation, the echo of footsteps, and the movement of forms that refuse to remain unseen. Mistvale Camp. A group of friends huddle around the campfire, swapping scary stories. One of the campers suggests they explore the nearby woods. The group sets off into the woods, their flashlights casting eerie shadows. The trees grow taller and the air thickens with an unnatural presence. The group stumbles upon an ancient, cyclopean structure, covered in cryptic symbols. They realize they're not alone, and something is watching them. Panic sets in as they frantically try to escape. The group's screams are drowned out by an unearthly sound. The true horror emerges from the mist. Mistvale Camp lies deep within a sprawling bayou, where the water moves slowly and the fog drifts thick across the marsh. The cypress trees rise like silent sentinels, their roots twisting into the dark water, creating islands of shadow that shift with every ripple. The air is heavy and humid, carrying the scent of wet earth and decaying vegetation. Even in daylight, the mist clings to the ground and the water, giving the landscape an otherworldly, dreamlike quality. The landscape has an otherworldly, dreamlike quality. Even in daylight, the mist clings to the ground and the water, giving the landscape an otherworldly, dreamlike quality. At night, the fog becomes nearly impenetrable, rolling in thick curtains that obscure vision and distort sound, leaving visitors uncertain of distance or direction. Figures appear in the mist. They are fleeting, sometimes glimpsed along the banks, sometimes emerging from the water itself. Their movements are silent, deliberate, and unerringly human in shape, yet they vanish when approached. Observers report that these figures sometimes follow silently, maintaining a constant presence just beyond perception. Their silhouettes are subtle but unmistakable, appearing as shadows among the cypress knees or as vague shapes gliding along the water. They never confront directly, yet their presence is persistently felt, creating a sense of being watched and never alone. Soft laughter echoes across the water. At irregular intervals, visitors hear the faintest hints of laughter carried on the breeze. It is distant, ethereal, and impossible to locate. Sometimes it comes from the direction of the camp. Other times from deeper within the foggy bayou. The sound is not constant but intermittent, appearing when least expected and vanishing just as quickly. Those who hear it report a strange mixture of amusement and unease. As though the mist itself is alive and capable of observing and responding to their movements. The fog interacts with the environment in ways that defy explanation. Trees, water, and islands seem to shift within the mist, making familiar landmarks appear different and disorienting. The fog itself feels sentient, as though it is aware of human presence and capable of directing attention, guiding perception, and shaping the experience of the camp. Visitors often experience tactile sensations. Some feel cold hands brush along their arms or shoulders, fleeting but unmistakable. The touch is light, brushing only briefly, yet it leaves a lingering awareness of an unseen presence. These sensations are reported most frequently near the water's edge or along the narrow paths winding between the trees. The combination of visual and tactile phenomena produces a heightened sense of vulnerability, making each step cautious and deliberate. Even when alone, visitors feel the oppressive awareness of another presence nearby, unseen yet undeniably present. Auditory phenomena enhance the atmosphere. Beyond the soft laughter, visitors describe hearing whispers carried across the water. Visitors describe hearing whispers carried across the water. The sounds are almost intelligible, phrases that seem to brush against the mind but remain elusive. The rustling of leaves and creaking of cypress knees blend seamlessly with these whispered sounds, making it difficult to distinguish between natural and supernatural. Some report hearing footsteps echoing along the water's edge, only to discover no visible source. The combination of visual, tactile, and auditory stimuli creates an immersive experience that is both captivating and disorienting. Night amplifies the camp's mysterious qualities. As darkness falls, the mist thickens and visibility drops dramatically. Lanterns or flashlights reveal brief glimpses of figures and shifting shadows, only for them to vanish seconds later. The laughter and whispers become more pronounced, and every splash in the water, every crack of a branch, feels amplified in the fog. The environment itself seems alive, reacting to human presence, guiding perception, and enforcing a sense of isolation. The thick mist and the obscured landscape create a claustrophobic sense of entrapment, making the bayou feel both infinite and enclosing at once. Daylight provides little reprieve. Though visibility improves, the phenomena persist. Figures may be glimpsed among the trees. Shapes in the water continue to hint at movement. Some visitors report hearing whispers or laughter even during the day, though fainter and harder to localize. The persistent presence of the figures and the sensations of being observed leave lasting impressions, creating a memory that continues to affect visitors long after leaving Mistvale Camp. The camp is a place of continuity and pattern. Local accounts describe similar experiences across generations. Glimpses of figures, whispers, cold touches, and shifting mist. These occurrences are consistent, forming an environment where human perception is challenged. And the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Every visitor contributes to this continuum, entering a landscape that responds to observation, curiosity, and fear. The combination of water, mist, trees, and shadow creates a layered, immersive experience that cannot be entirely explained or anticipated. Mistvale Camp endures as a hauntingly immersive environment. Its fog, water, and cypress trees create an uncanny setting where human perception intersects with the inexplicable. Figures appear and vanish, laughter echoes across the water, and subtle touches remind visitors of unseen observers. Every visit shapes the memory and experience, leaving a persistent awareness of the camp's presence. The ordinary becomes strange, the familiar becomes mysterious, and the bayou itself seems alive with observation and silent movement. Even after leaving, the sensations linger. Visitors carry the feeling of unseen eyes, of figures slipping through the mist, and of laughter that has no origin. The fog, water, and trees of Mistvale Camp remain alive in memory. A testament to the camp's unique ability to merge environment, perception, and mystery into a single, haunting experience. It is a place where silence, mist, and movement converge to create a space that is both beautiful and unsettling. A bayou that watches, follows, and whispers to all who enter its fog-shrouded paths. Shadowfisher Camp rests along a quiet stretch of river, its cabins dark and still as night falls. The surrounding water reflects moonlight, creating a silver sheen that seems almost alive. Yet the calm is deceptive. Shadowy forms glide along the water, moving with a purpose that feels neither accidental nor natural. Figures appear in cabins, pacing silently. Visitors describe seeing outlines of people within the wooden cabins. The forms move deliberately, walking from room to room without a sound, their presence unmistakable yet elusive. Windows glow faintly as shadows pass, and for those who pause to observe, it is impossible to determine whether they are intruders, memories, or something altogether otherworldly. The pacing seems patient, almost watchful, as if the camp itself remembers every footstep and gesture of its past occupants. Visitors feel a presence following their boat. Travelers who navigate the river near Shadowfisher Camp often report the sensation of being watched. Some claim that when drifting along in a boat, an unseen force mirrors their movements, keeping pace even when no one else is in sight. The water seems to respond to their passage, small waves rising along the hull, faint shadows gliding alongside. This feeling is accompanied by a subtle pressure in the air, a sensation that something is there, close, and aware of their every motion. Sounds unsettle the senses. Beyond what is seen, Shadowfisher Camp carries an audible presence. The rustle of reeds along the bank seems timed with the shadowy forms. Occasionally, a soft creak comes from a cabin door, followed by silence. Ripples across the water echo like whispers, faint yet distinct, unsettling the calm night. These sounds heighten the tension, making visitors aware that each step, each movement on the water, is observed and acknowledged. Patterns emerge in encounters. Though each witness recounts a unique experience, certain patterns recur. Figures glide along specific stretches of the river, usually near the cabins or bends in the shoreline. Shadows appear at the same windows, pacing the same rooms repeatedly. The sensations of being followed in a boat often coincide with areas where the river narrows. These repeated occurrences suggest a deliberate, lingering presence that persists over time. The psychological impact is profound. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences affects visitors deeply. Many report a sudden awareness of every movement, a heightened sense of caution as shadows and sound surround them. Some feel chills even in warm air, as if the presence is a living entity reacting to their presence. The anticipation of seeing a figure or hearing a whisper intensifies with each passing minute, creating an atmosphere that lingers long after leaving the waterway. Interactions feel deliberate. Witnesses often describe moments that feel intentional. Shadows pause to watch before vanishing. Figures inside cabins seem to track movement outside. The sensation of a presence following the boat is persistent, maintaining distance yet remaining constant. These experiences give the impression that Shadowfisher Camp is not simply haunted. but engaged, interacting with each visitor in a subtle and disconcerting manner. The environment amplifies the supernatural. The camp's natural setting contributes to the eerie atmosphere. Moonlight glints off the water, casting reflections that mimic the movements of the figures. Reeds and branches bend in ways that seem unnatural, adding motion where there should be none. The cabins themselves, weathered and silent, act as focal points for the shadowy forms and lantern-like glows, blending the natural and supernatural seamlessly. History lingers in the camp. Shadowfisher Camp is steeped in history, its cabins and docks bearing silent witness to decades of activity and life. Many believe the figures represent echoes of past occupants or travelers, memories etched into the space. The river, the cabins, and the surrounding woods seem to hold on to these histories, manifesting as shadows, flickering lights, and the persistent feeling of being followed. The environment itself appears alive with memory, a constant presence that both informs and unsettles visitors. Perception challenges reality. Travelers often struggle to distinguish between natural phenomena and supernatural occurrences. Shadows stretch unnaturally, lights appear without source, and figures vanish when approached. The sounds of the river, wind, and creaking structures create a sensory interplay that confounds expectations, leaving each visitor unsure of what is real. The combination of observed and felt phenomena produces an experience that is immersive, unsettling, and unforgettable. The enduring mystery of Shadowfisher Camp. Shadowfisher Camp remains a place of fascination and unease. Shadowy figures glide across the water, lights flicker within the cabins, and a presence follows those on the river. These encounters are consistent, yet unpredictable, leaving visitors with memories that linger long after departure. The camp continues to challenge perceptions, offering glimpses of a world where the natural and supernatural coexist, where each visitor feels the weight of being observed by something unseen. Shadowfisher Camp waits silently. As night deepens, the river darkens, shadows drift along the banks, and the cabins glow faintly from within. Shadowfisher Camp exists as a place of observation and mystery, where every ripple, every flicker of light, and every whispered sound carries a presence beyond the ordinary. Those who pass through the camp leave with the knowledge that the water, the cabins, and the surrounding woods are alive in ways that remain unseen, and that the shadowy watchers will endure, silently, long after the night has passed. Deadman's dock sits at the edge of a quiet bayou, a place abandoned decades ago. The wood is weathered and gray, boards creaking under even the lightest touch. Moss clings to the posts, and the water laps gently against the supports, carrying with it the soft smell of earth and decay. In daylight, it appears as nothing more than a forgotten structure, a relic of the past. But as night falls, the dock comes alive with a presence that defies explanation. Visitors who arrive after sunset notice an immediate change. The air grows colder, heavy with mist that rises from the water, curling around the posts and drifting across the boards. The silence is profound, yet every movement seems magnified. Every movement seems magnified. The faint sound of footsteps echoes over the water, though no one is present. Though no one is present. Shadows lengthen unnaturally along the dock, shifting as if responding to an unseen rhythm. Shifting as if responding to an unseen rhythm. It is here that figures are said to rise from the water. They emerge silently, their forms barely discernible in the fog, pale and glimmering faintly in the moonlight. Observers report that they move deliberately, gliding along the surface as if walking through air. Eyes, when visible, reflect the dim light, and the figures pause to regard anyone who dares approach. Their movements are slow, deliberate, and purposeful, yet entirely silent. Lanterns swing along the dock, some appearing near posts, others drifting just above the water. There is no one to hold them, and yet their light illuminates the boards and the surrounding water with a soft glow. Each lantern flickers in a rhythm that seems almost conscious, casting long shadows across the dock and the surface of the bayou. Observers describe a feeling of being watched, as if the lanterns themselves mark the presence of something aware and patient. Footsteps follow visitors along the dock, soft but unmistakable. Sometimes they seem to match the visitor's pace, other times they fall behind or approach from the water itself. The sound is light, like shoes brushing against wood, but carries the weight of something unseen. It is accompanied by occasional splashes, small disturbances in the water that appear without cause. The dock seems alive, responding to movement and attention, creating a sensation that the living and the spectral share the same space. The water itself holds its own secrets. Ripples form when no wind disturbs the surface, circling slowly around the dock posts. Reflections in the water sometimes show figures that are not standing on the boards, as if rising from below. Visitors report feeling cold fingers brush against their arms or shoulders, fleeting touches that vanish as soon as they are noticed. The combination of water, mist, and lanterns creates an environment where ordinary perception is challenged, and every shadow feels intentional. The dock seems to remember. Those who linger note that their path along the board subtly shifts. A post may lean differently, a rope may swing higher than before, or a lantern may be in a position it was not moments ago. These subtle changes contribute to the sense that Dead Man's Dock is aware, observing, and perhaps guiding those who enter. Time here feels fluid, minutes stretching into hours, and hours folding into seconds, creating a disorienting effect on the mind. Visitors often report hearing whispers carried over the water. The words are faint and difficult to discern, sometimes names, sometimes fragments of sentences, always compelling attention. These whispers rise and fall with the movement of mist, echoing across the bayou, and creating an intimacy that is both chilling and mesmerizing. Combined with the lanterns and figures, the whispers make the dock a place where reality and the spectral blend seamlessly. As the night deepens, the dock becomes a theater of subtle and haunting activity. Figures emerge and fade, lanterns drift without hands, and footsteps echo where none should be. Every element of the water, the fog, the shadows, and the light works together to create an environment where the unseen becomes palpable. Visitors often feel drawn to the edge, compelled to observe the figures rising from the water, aware that they are being watched in return. Dead Man's Dock is not merely a location but an experience of presence and attention. Figures glide from the water, eyes glowing faintly, lanterns drift and swing as if carried by invisible hands. And whispers echo along the boards. Every visitor leaves with a lingering sense of being observed, touched, and followed by something that cannot be explained by ordinary means. The dock stands abandoned by design, yet alive with unseen activity. Water ripples without wind, mist moves with deliberate intent. Shadows linger where they should not. Lanterns light the way, figures emerge silently. Whispers trace the edges of perception. Every visit is unique, yet all who come share a common thread, a feeling of presence. An awareness of the unknown, and the haunting memory of a dock where the living and the unseen meet. Beneath the quiet glow of the moon, Hollowbank Camp rests quietly beside a winding creek, tucked among dense trees and thick undergrowth. By day, it appears abandoned yet inviting, the wooden cabins weathered and silent. The creek murmurs over stones, a gentle sound that seems ordinary in daylight, but as evening falls, the atmosphere changes, becoming charged with a subtle tension. As night descends, the camp transforms. Figures appear crouched along the banks of the creek. Their movements are deliberate yet fleeting, glimpsed only for a moment. The water seems to ripple as they move, though no one touches it. The reflections hint at forms that are not fully human. Visitors report hearing soft whispers drifting across the water. The whispers are faint, almost imperceptible at first, carried on the breeze. Echoing among the trees, the words are indistinct, yet unmistakably intentional. As if something or something is trying to communicate. The whispers follow travelers as they move along the creek. Growing slightly louder with each step, yet always just out of reach. The cabins themselves are not entirely passive. Doors creak, even when the wind is absent, and shadows flicker across windows where no light shines. Lanterns placed along the path sometimes sway as if touched by invisible hands, casting elongated forms that stretch across the ground. Every sound and movement heightens the feeling of being observed, a sense that the camp is alive with unseen presence. Figures shift along the creek banks with an unsettling fluidity. One moment they appear crouched behind a tree or stone, the next gliding silently across the grass. Travelers often feel a chill pass through the air as they approach, as if the figures themselves exhale cold breaths. The creek's surface shimmers in the moonlight, reflecting shapes that do not match any visitor or object, rippling with motion that has no clear source. The whispers grow more persistent as the night deepens. Some visitors hear their names carried across the water, faintly, repeatedly. The effect is subtle but insistent, drawing attention to the unseen figures on the banks. The sounds are accompanied by soft footfalls, the creak of boards, and the occasional plink of a stone into the creek. Though the area remains empty to the eye, trees and undergrowth play a role in the haunting. Shadows stretch and bend unnaturally, elongating across cabins and paths. Branches sway with no breeze, and the fog that sometimes rolls in from the creek thickens around travelers. The camp becomes a labyrinth of observation and reflection, where every movement suggests presence and awareness beyond the natural world. Visitors often feel compelled to pause, drawn toward the water, the whispering, or the subtle movement along the banks. The figures do not approach aggressively, but their silent observation creates an unshakable tension. Glimpses of pale faces or crouched forms are fleeting, leaving a lingering impression of being watched, followed, and acknowledged without contact. The creek itself participates in the experience. Ripples appear spontaneously, moving against the current, hinting at entities submerged or hidden beneath the surface. Shapes shift in the water, pale and indistinct, vanishing when approached. The reflections mirror not just the environment, but the presence of something intangible. A layer of life unseen by the naked eye. Sound and sight converge to make the night at Hollowbank Camp memorable. Footsteps echo where no one walks, lanterns sway as if carried, and whispers drift from the water, weaving together an atmosphere of uncertainty and unease. Every creak of wood, every ripple in the creek, every shadow stretching across the ground contributes to the haunting, creating an environment where the ordinary and supernatural overlap. Every creak of wood, every ripple in the creek, every shadow stretching across the ground contributes to the haunting, creating an environment where the ordinary and supernatural overlap. Those who stay through the night leave with a lasting impression. The feeling of eyes watching from the darkness persists, along with the memory of soft whispers and the movement of figures on the banks. The creek, cabins, and trees retain the traces of the night, reminding travelers that Hollowbank Camp is not empty, and that its presence is subtle, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Hollowbank Camp endures as a place of quiet haunting. The figures crouched along the creek, the whispers carried on the water, and the shifting shadows all create an experience that is immersive, unsettling, and unforgettable. Every element of water, wood, fog, and shadow participates in the narrative, forming a landscape alive with unseen presence. Travelers depart knowing they have entered a space where the ordinary rules no longer apply, and where Hollowbank Camp watches, waits, and whispers through the night. Black Pine Landing rests along the edge of a slow, winding river, where the water reflects the tall pine trees that line the banks. The trunks rise like silent guardians, their dark needles forming a dense canopy that filters the sunlight into shifting patterns on the forest floor. The air is thick with the scent of pine sap and damp earth, and a subtle chill seems to linger even during warm days. The landing is quiet, isolated, and imbued with an atmosphere that feels both serene and unerringly watchful. Figures appear between the pines. They move silently, gliding along the tree line or appearing briefly near the water. Their forms are humanoid but indistinct, often seen only in the corner of vision before disappearing. Observers report that the figures never approach directly, yet their presence is undeniable. They seem aware of visitors, tracking movements, and slipping through the dense shadows of the forest with a grace that defies normal human motion. At times, multiple figures are glimpsed at once, standing or moving in patterns that suggest awareness and purpose. Visitors frequently feel cold touches along their arms and shoulders. The sensation is brief, almost ghostly, but unmistakable, leaving a shiver that travels down the spine. These touches are reported along the narrow paths between the trees, near the water's edge, or at points where the canopy creates thick shadows. They are subtle, never forceful, but they reinforce the sense of being observed. Even when alone, the air feels charged, as if unseen presences move with deliberate attention, their attention focused on each step, each breath. The landing is alive with sounds that heighten the tension. The rustling of needles and the soft creak of tree branches are accompanied by whispers that seem to drift on the wind. Visitors often describe hearing names, faintly spoken and indistinct, yet undeniably directed toward them. The water adds its own chorus, carrying distant sounds that may be natural or supernatural, making it difficult to distinguish reality from perception. Footsteps echo across the riverbank when no one is present, further enhancing the sense that Black Pine Landing exists in a liminal space between the seen and unseen. Fog and mist frequently appear in the early morning or late evening. The mist curls along the water and snakes between the pine trunks, obscuring familiar landmarks and creating a sense of disorientation. Figures often emerge from this fog, appearing fully formed for a moment before dissolving back into the mist. The shifting environment adds to the feeling that the landing itself is alive, capable of influencing perception and guiding attention toward hidden presences. Observers describe a heightened awareness of every sound and movement, as if the forest and river are attuned to their presence. Light interacts strangely with the surroundings. Sunlight filtering through the pine canopy creates shifting shadows that sometimes mimic human forms. Lanterns carried by visitors seem to flicker without cause, casting beams of light that catch on shapes unseen by the eye. Even at midday, areas beneath the trees remain dark, providing perfect concealment for figures that emerge and vanish without warning. The play of light and shadow contributes to the sense that the forest is inhabited by entities moving just beyond the threshold of visibility. Visitors often experience a mixture of awe and unease. The Landinga's beauty is undeniable, with the river reflecting the pine trees, and the mist adding an ethereal quality to the landscape. Yet this beauty is accompanied by persistent sensations of being observed, followed, or touched by unseen hands. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates an immersive experience that is both captivating and disorienting, leaving visitors unsure of where reality ends and the supernatural begins. At night, Black Pine Landing becomes more intense. Shadows deepen, and figures are seen more clearly against the dark trunks. Lanterns carried by visitors flicker, revealing glimpses of movement in places that moments before appeared empty. The night transforms the landing into a living, breathing environment where the forest, river, and unseen entities converge into a single, continuous presence. Even when the mist dissipates, the memory of Black Pine Landing lingers. Visitors recount the figures glimpsed between the trees, the cold touches along their arms, and the whispers that followed them along the riverbank. The sensations persist, leaving a lingering awareness that the landing itself is aware of their presence. Each visit reinforces the sense that this place exists on a threshold, a space where human perception intersects with phenomena that cannot be fully explained. Black Pine Landing is more than a location, it is an encounter. The river, the trees, the fog, and the figures combine to create a unique environment, where ordinary landscapes become extraordinary, and natural elements become conduits for the unseen. The landing challenges perception, engages the senses, and leaves visitors with a profound awareness of the interplay between the tangible and the intangible. It is a place where shadows move, hands touch without being seen, and the pine forest watches silently. For those who return, Black Pine Landing offers repeated experiences of its mysteries. The patterns remain consistent, figures appear between the trees. Cold touches mark the arms of those passing, whispers drift across the water. And mist hides and reveals in equal measure. Visitors learn to move cautiously, to observe carefully, and to remain alert to the subtle signals of the environment. Every step becomes a study in perception. Every glance a reminder that this landing is watched, alive, and enigmatic. Black Pine Landing endures as a place of haunting beauty. The river reflects the pine canopy. The mist drifts like smoke across the water. And unseen figures continue their silent vigil. It is a landscape that merges environment, perception, and mystery into a cohesive, immersive experience. Those who visit leave with the memory of being observed, touched, and guided by unseen presences, carrying the awareness of Black Pine Landing long after they depart its shadowed paths. Ghost Light Camp rests along a quiet stretch of river, where the mist curls over the water like living smoke. Lanterns float along the piers without anyone holding them, their soft glow cutting through the fog in unpredictable patterns. The light drifts slowly, sometimes hovering near the edges of the cabins, sometimes moving out over the water, leaving trails that seem to pulse with their own energy. Visitors report seeing outlines of people standing motionless next to the wooden structures. They do not move or speak, yet their presence is unmistakable. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the porches and along the paths, shifting with the flickering lantern light. Occasionally, these figures glance toward the visitors, then vanish before anyone can approach. The stillness of the night amplifies the sense of being watched, as though every movement is noted by eyes unseen. Pale faces emerge in the fog. Some explorers describe moments when fog thickens suddenly, revealing ghostly faces that stare through the mist. These visages are pale, almost translucent, and vanish when approached. The faces often appear along the docks or near the cabin doors, peering from behind trees or rising from the water. The combination of fog, light, and shadow creates an atmosphere where reality feels suspended, and the camp itself seems to breathe around its visitors. Sounds enhance the haunting. The night at Ghost Light Camp carries its own soundtrack. Creaks of wooden cabins. The faintest echo of footsteps. Lanterns sway slightly as if responding to an invisible wind. These subtle sounds, combined with the drifting lights and figures, create a tension that keeps visitors alert, acutely aware of the camp's pervasive presence. Patterns suggest intention. Though each encounter is unique, visitors often report recurring details. Lanterns follow similar paths, gliding along the same stretches of pier or around the corners of cabins. Shadowy figures appear at the same locations, standing for minutes before fading into the mist. These repeated occurrences suggest that the camp is not merely haunted by random apparitions, but that the phenomena are deliberate, as if the place itself is aware of those who enter and engages with them subtly. The psychological impact is profound. Witnesses describe a growing sense of unease as they move through the camp. The soft glow of the lanterns, the sudden appearances of figures, and the pale faces in the fog combine to create a heightened awareness. Even when nothing moves, the feeling of being watched persists. Some visitors find themselves pausing in mid-step, listening for the slightest sound, their minds acutely attuned to every flicker of light or movement of fog. The environment amplifies the supernatural. Ghost Light Camp's natural setting contributes to its eerie atmosphere. Trees lean over the paths, their branches twisting like grasping hands. Reflections on the water create illusions of movement, amplifying the sense of being surrounded. The cabins themselves, weathered and silent, act as focal points for the ghostly figures and floating lanterns, blending natural elements with inexplicable phenomena. Interactions feel purposeful. Visitors often describe interactions that seem intentional. Lanterns drift closer as they walk past, figures shift positions to follow their movement. And pale faces appear suddenly at a doorway. The presence is persistent, almost sentient, responding to the visitor's actions. These experiences suggest a level of awareness, creating an unsettling impression that Ghost Light Camp is alive with unseen watchers. Creating an unsettling impression that Ghost Light Camp is alive with unseen watchers. History lingers in the camp. Ghost Light Camp is steeped in history, the cabins and piers bearing witness to decades of human activity. Many believe the figures represent echoes of past campers or workers, their memories imprinted on the space. The floating lanterns, drifting shadows, and pale faces serve as reminders that the camp holds onto its history, manifesting it in ways that visitors can see, hear, and feel. Perception challenges reality. The phenomena at Ghost Light Camp blur the line between natural and supernatural. Lanterns float without hands, figures appear and vanish suddenly. Faces emerge in fog that shifts constantly. Sound and movement combine to confound expectations, leaving visitors unsure of what is real. The sensory experiences are immersive, creating a compelling and unsettling environment where every moment feels alive with possibility. The enduring mystery of Ghost Light Camp. Ghost Light Camp remains a destination for those seeking encounters beyond the ordinary. Floating lanterns, silent figures, and pale faces in the fog continue to capture the attention of every visitor. Each experience is unique yet follows a pattern, reinforcing the sense that the camp is inhabited by persistent, watchful presences. It is a place where light, shadow, and sound converge to create an enduring, inexplicable atmosphere. Ghost Light Camp waits silently. As night deepens, fog thickens over the water, lanterns drift along the piers. And shadowy figures linger by the cabins. Visitors move cautiously through the camp. Aware that every step, every glance, and every sound is observed by something beyond the ordinary. Ghost Light Camp exists as a living memory, where history and the supernatural intertwine, leaving each visitor with the lingering sense of unseen watchers, pale faces, and floating lights that will remain long after the dawn. Ashwood Bayou Camp sits quietly along the edge of a dark and winding waterway. By day, the sunlight glints off the water and warms the weathered wooden planks of the piers. The camp appears peaceful, still, and forgotten, a place where the natural world holds sway and human activity has long ceased. Canoes rest on the shore, ropes hang slack from docks, and the tall reeds sway gently in the breeze. But the true nature of Ashwood Bayou Camp is not revealed in the light of day. As night falls, the atmosphere changes. Shadows stretch across the water, moving with a life of their own. Figures glide silently along the piers and edges of the bayou, their forms barely discernible through the thick mist that rises from the water. These shapes do not move like ordinary people. They seem to drift, almost floating above the boards, their presence suggested by subtle movements and the way the mist bends around them. The sound of a solitary step is amplified by the stillness of the night, creating the sensation that someone is pacing slowly, methodically, just beyond sight. Sometimes the footsteps seem to follow the visitors, appearing to match their pace. Other times, they fall behind, as though tracing their movements from a distance, creating a sense of both closeness and inescapability. The water itself contributes to the haunting atmosphere. Ripples form where no wind disturbs the surface. Reflections shimmer oddly, distorted as if the surface holds secrets that cannot be explained. Visitors report glimpses of figures standing in the shallows, pale and indistinct, fading when approached. The combination of water, fog, and shadow blurs the line between reality and the unseen, making it difficult to determine what is natural and what is spectral. Lanterns, long extinguished, sometimes appear along the piers. Their light is dim, wavering, and casts long shadows across the boards and into the surrounding water. There is no one to hold them, yet the lanterns seem purposeful, illuminating corners and pathways that lead nowhere. Observers describe a sensation of being guided or watched, as if the lanterns themselves possess intent and consciousness. Whispers drift over the water, faint and unintelligible, rising and falling with the movement of the mist. Some hear their own names spoken softly, carried on the cool night air. The whispers blend with the sounds of the bayou, creating a chorus of subtle voices that suggest stories, warnings, or perhaps memories lingering in the space. The effect is hypnotic, drawing attention while instilling unease, leaving visitors unsure whether the voices are from the water, the land, or the figures that move among them. The camp feels alive in a way that defies explanation. Each board and post, each ripple and shadow, participates in a silent, continuous performance. Figures appear at the edge of vision, pause, and vanish. Footsteps echo unpredictably. Lanterns swing without wind. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation, as though the camp itself remembers every visitor, every step, and every movement ever made upon its piers. Visitors describe the sensation of being followed even when no one is visible. Cold brushes against their arms and shoulders, brief and fleeting, leaving the skin tingling. The fog thickens around them, sometimes coiling like fingers across the boards, guiding or restraining. The water occasionally surges gently against the piers, forming ripples that mimic the movements of the unseen figures. Every detail reinforces the impression that Ashwood Bayou Camp is a place where the living and the spectral exist in parallel, overlapping realms. Time at Ashwood Bayou Camp behaves differently. Minutes stretch longer than they should. Sounds of footsteps or whispers seem to persist. Shadows may linger for a moment longer than possible. Visitors often feel a magnetic pull toward the piers or the water's edge, compelled to observe figures rising from the dark, yet wary of approaching too closely. Every night at the camp tells a story. Figures rise silently from the water. Footsteps echo across the piers. Lanterns light pathways without hands. Whispers carry across the fog. The experience is both mesmerizing and unsettling. Those who visit leave with the memory of a place that exists simultaneously in reality and in the realm of the unseen. A place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary under the cover of darkness. Ashwood Bayou Camp is more than a location. It is a space of presence and observation. A place where shadows glide. Footsteps echo. And the water holds secrets just beneath the surface. The combination of mist, lanterns, and spectral figures creates an environment that is unforgettable, compelling visitors to leave with a heightened awareness of the unseen, the unknown, and the persistent life that lingers quietly along the piers and the water. At the edge of the bayou, the camp endures, unchanged yet ever active in ways invisible to the untrained eye. Every visit is a journey into a space where human perception meets something beyond understanding. A night at Ashwood Bayou Camp that leaves an indelible impression long after the mist has cleared. By day, the landing appears ordinary, with wooden piers and shallow marshes stretching along the shoreline. Yet, the history of drownings lingers, saturating the air with a sense of unease that deepens as the sun sets. As twilight falls, the bayou changes. Figures begin to rise silently from the water, pale and still. They do not move like the living, their motions are deliberate, slow, almost gliding. The water ripples gently around them, yet no one is seen disturbing the surface. Visitors who watch from the banks report an overwhelming sensation of being observed, as if the figures are aware of their presence without making a sound. The air carries distant cries and whispers that seem to float above the water. At first, they are faint, like echoes from another time, but they grow sharper, more persistent, as the night deepens. The sounds come from no visible source, and yet they have directionality, weaving through the cypress knees and across the landing as if guiding unseen currents. Those who linger feel an irresistible pull toward the water, a subtle compulsion that is difficult to resist. A sense of impending doom and madness. Lanterns along the landing sometimes flicker without wind, casting shadows that stretch across the mud and water. The reflections of the trees in the bayou distort, appearing darker and longer than natural. Figures are occasionally glimpsed standing at the edges of the piers, or partially submerged, their shapes hazy and indistinct. Movement occurs only in the periphery, never directly in the center of vision, enhancing the sense that something unseen surrounds visitors at all times. The figures in the water are not aggressive, but their presence is undeniably unnerving. Some observers report seeing pale faces emerge briefly, with eyes that reflect the moonlight. Others describe hands rising from the surface, reaching skyward as if seeking release, then vanishing before they can be touched. The sensations are accompanied by the smell of damp earth and stagnant water, mingling with the faint chill of night air that seems to rise directly from the bayou. Sound plays a key role in the haunting. Whispers carry fragments of words. The cries vary in intensity, as though the water itself is giving voice. Rising and falling like a tide. Fog often rolls in from the bayou, thickening the air and obscuring sight lines. Shadows lengthen and merge with the mist, creating shapes that seem to hover over the water. The figures rising from the bayou appear to glide effortlessly through the fog, their forms ethereal, sometimes only glimpsed as flickers at the edges of vision. The landing becomes a space where perception is unreliable, where the ordinary elements of water, wood, and tree blend seamlessly with the supernatural. Visitors report feeling cold touches on their skin, light brushes across arms or shoulders, though no one is visible nearby. The sensation is brief but leaves an impression of presence, of being acknowledged by something otherworldly. The water occasionally churns without wind or current, sending ripples that hint at movement beneath the surface. Some have felt the tug of unseen hands as if the bayou itself is reaching for them, a gentle yet undeniable reminder of the Landinga's haunted past. The combination of sound, shadow, and movement creates a pervasive sense of unease. The water reflects not only the trees and the moon, but hints at shapes beneath, moving slowly and deliberately. Figures appear and vanish, cries rise and fade, and whispers drift endlessly across the night air. Time seems to stretch and contract at Widowmaker Landing, leaving visitors disoriented, aware of the presence of both the living and the spectral. By the early hours of the morning, the bayou often returns to an almost normal appearance. Figures disappear beneath the water, cries and whispers fade. And the fog begins to lift. Yet, the memory of the night remains. Visitors leave with an acute awareness of having been watched, touched, and guided, even briefly, by forces unseen. The piers, the mud, and the water retain a quiet memory of those who rose from the depths, a lingering sense of life beyond life. The figures that rise from the water, the whispers carried across the bayou, the cold touches and faint cries all combine to create an experience that is immersive, unsettling, and unforgettable. Every element of water, wood, fog, and shadow participates in the narrative, forming a space alive with unseen presence. Visitors depart knowing they have entered a place where the ordinary rules no longer apply, and where Widowmaker Landing watches, waits, and whispers through the night. Misty Pines Camp lies nestled among tall, densely packed pines. The forest surrounds the clearing with thick trunks that rise skyward, their needles forming a near-impenetrable canopy. Even in the brightest hours of the day, shadows linger beneath the trees, moving subtly as if stirred by an unseen presence. The air carries the scent of pine and damp earth, a freshness that conceals an underlying tension. Visitors quickly notice that this is no ordinary campsite. There is a stillness that seems watchful, a quiet that carries weight. Each night, fog rolls in across the camp, drifting along the paths and weaving between the cabins and tents. The mist clings to the trees and low-lying ground, muffling sound and obscuring vision. Within this fog, figures sometimes appear. They are indistinct at first, pale silhouettes that emerge briefly before vanishing into the white haze. Observers report that these figures seem to watch silently, their attention unwavering. They do not approach directly, yet their presence is palpable, creating the sensation that the camp is being observed from every angle. These brushes are fleeting and light, but undeniable. Where the fog is thickest. The touches are subtle and never threatening, yet they heighten the sense of being accompanied, followed, or observed by entities that remain just beyond perception. Sounds carry differently through Misty Pines Camp. The fog amplifies and distorts ordinary noises. Pine needles crunch underfoot with a resonance that seems closer than it should. The wind rustling through the trees sometimes resembles faint whispers, calling names that no one speaks aloud. Water from the nearby creek creates small, lapping echoes that seem to punctuate the stillness, blending with the whispers in a way that makes it difficult to distinguish natural sounds from the supernatural. Footsteps are heard on paths where no one walks, and distant laughter drifts through the mist, chilling in its unexpected familiarity. The fog changes the perception of space. Paths that were clear by day become corridors of uncertainty. Trees appear to shift positions. And the cabins seem further apart than they actually are. Figures materialize at the periphery of vision, standing or moving just out of clear sight. Visitors report turning to find nothing. Only the mist curling back over itself, hiding shapes and distorting distances. Hiding shapes and distorting distances. Even familiar landmarks become strange. And the line between reality and imagination blurs, creating an atmosphere charged with anticipation and unease. Light behaves strangely within the camp. Lanterns carried by campers flicker for no apparent reason, casting shadows that move independently of natural movement. Moonlight filtering through the pines sometimes illuminates figures in the mist, revealing their forms only briefly before they vanish. Even during daylight, the fog can shift and thicken, leaving patches of shadow where figures are glimpsed or sensed. The interplay of light, shadow, and fog reinforces the feeling that the camp itself is alive, responsive to presence, and aware of every movement. Those who spend time in Misty Pines Camp describe a mix of fascination and unease. The beauty of the forest is undeniable, the creek shimmering and the pines stretching endlessly skyward. Yet this beauty is entwined with constant awareness, the feeling that unseen entities are present and attentive. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow in the fog, every distant whisper heightens vigilance. Visitors learn quickly to move deliberately, to observe carefully, and to respect the subtle signals of the environment. At night, the intensity grows. The fog becomes denser, figures appear more frequently. And the cold touches increase in number and urgency. Lantern light flickers unpredictably, revealing glimpses of movement near the trees or cabins that moments before appeared empty. The fog carries whispers, laughter, and the sound of footsteps, all combining to create an immersive, almost otherworldly experience. The senses are heightened, and every sound or shadow feels charged with significance, leaving campers aware that Misty Pines Camp is more than a placea, it is an encounter. Even after leaving, the memory of the camp lingers. Visitors recount the figures glimpsed between trees, the unseen touches, and the whispers that seem to follow them. Across the fog, the forest, the mist, and the figures continue to exist beyond sight and sound, observing and interacting with those who enter. That Misty Pines Camp exists on the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. A place where nature, perception, and the unseen converge. A sense that the forest, the mist, and the figures continue to exist beyond sight and sound. Observing and interacting with those who enter. That Misty Pines camp exists on the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. A lasting impression, a sense that the forest, the mist, and the figures continue to exist beyond sight and sound. Observing and interacting with those who enter. A sense that the forest, the mist, and the figures continue to exist beyond sight and sound. That Misty Pines camp exists on the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary, a place where nature, perception, and the unseen converge. A sense that the forest, the mist, and the figures continue to exist beyond sight and sound. Observing and interacting with those who enter. That Misty Pines camp exists on the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary, a place where nature, perception, and the unseen converge. A sense that the forest, the mist, and the figures continue to exist beyond sight and sound. Observing and interacting with those who enter. Misty Pines camp endures as a location of subtle mystery. The pines, the fog, and the creek create an environment that is beautiful, immersive, and unsettling. Figures appear and vanish with the mist, unseen hands leave traces of presence, and whispers drift through the night air. Visitors feel, see, and sense the interaction of elements that are both natural and otherworldly. Each step through the camp is an exploration of perception, every glance a reminder that the forest watches silently. For those who return, the experiences remain consistent. Figures appear in the mist, cold touches mark the arms of those passing. And whispers drift along familiar paths. The fog guides perception and shapes reality, creating a place that feels alive and aware. Visitors leave with memories of encounters that blend fear, curiosity, and awe. That blend fear, curiosity, and awe. Misty Pines Camp is a place where the ordinary world overlaps with something beyond. A forest that observes, interacts, and endures. Misty Pines Camp remains a place of haunting beauty and quiet terror. The fog, the pines, and the creek combine to create an environment where the unseen is tangible. Figures move silently through the mist, unseen hands leave fleeting touches, and whispers echo along the paths. Visitors experience a persistent awareness of being observed, touched, and guided by the unseen. Misty Pines Camp is a unique landscape, one where nature and mystery intertwine to leave a lasting impression on all who enter. Blackroot Camp lies along a secluded stretch of water where the moonlight casts an almost unnatural darkness across the surface. The water appears black, still and reflective, absorbing the silver light of the moon. At night, the camp transforms. Figures emerge briefly from the shadows along the banks, moving with a fluid, silent grace. They linger for moments, just long enough for a visitor to glimpse the outline of a body or a flicker of movement, and then they vanish, leaving no trace. The air carries faint sounds, soft and haunting. Visitors often report hearing whispers and faint chanting drifting on the wind. The words are indistinct, but their rhythm is steady and deliberate, as if some unseen ritual continues in the darkness. The sound travels across the black water, reaching ears before the source can be located. Occasionally, the chanting seems to respond to footsteps, growing louder as someone approaches the edge of the water, then fading when attention shifts elsewhere. Figures move among the shadows. Along the banks and among the trees surrounding the camp, shadowy forms glide in and out of view. They do not interact directly, yet their presence is undeniable. Some figures appear as silhouettes against the moonlight, while others seem to shimmer, half visible, as if the air itself holds them in suspension. The shapes shift with the fog and the moonlight, making it difficult to know where reality ends and illusion begins. The water itself seems alive. Blackroot Camp's water is a central presence in the experience. Reflections ripple without cause. And small disturbances appear where no stone has been thrown. Some visitors swear that the water moves in response to their presence, forming subtle patterns that suggest something beneath the surface is aware of every movement. The blackness of the water contrasts sharply with the faint glow of the moon, creating an unsettling mirror that holds secrets just below its surface. Sounds of nature mix with the supernatural. The environment enhances the haunting. Crickets chirp in the undergrowth, frogs croak from the banks, and leaves rustle as the wind moves through the trees. Yet these natural sounds are interwoven with something else. The chanting seems to arise from the water itself, or perhaps from the trees, impossible to localize. Footsteps echo on the forest floor when no one is there, and the occasional splash in the water startles even seasoned visitors. The combination of ordinary and extraordinary elements keeps anyone on edge. Patterns suggest purpose. Witnesses often notice repeated phenomena. Figures appear in the same locations, moving along similar paths at intervals throughout the night. Figures appear in the same locations, moving along similar paths at intervals throughout the night. Lantern-like glows sometimes flicker near the water, appearing and disappearing without explanation. Chanting follows a rhythm, sometimes rising and falling in a pattern that feels intentional. These repeated occurrences imply that Blackroot Camp is not merely haunted by random events but that the presence within the camp interacts in deliberate ways with its surroundings and those who enter. The psychological effect is profound. Visitors describe a deep sense of unease and heightened awareness. Each rustle, each whisper, each shadow evokes a response, making the senses sharper, more sensitive. The isolation of the camp amplifies this effect. Even when no figure is present, the anticipation of something appearing creates a tension that is both palpable and persistent. Many find that the longer they remain, the more the environment seems to press against them, as if aware of their fears and feeding upon them. Fog and moonlight enhance the mystery. Mist frequently rises from the black water, swirling along the banks and through the trees. Moonlight pierces the fog in slender beams, illuminating the occasional figure or ripple on the water. The interplay of light, shadow, and mist creates a surreal, almost cinematic quality. Objects and figures shift as the fog moves, further obscuring the boundary between reality and the supernatural. Visitors feel they are walking through a space where time and perception are altered, and the ordinary laws of the physical world no longer fully apply. Encounters feel deliberate. Some visitors experience moments where figures seem to respond to their movements. Lantern-like glows drift closer as they walk past, shadows appear in their peripheral vision. The chanting sometimes grows in volume or clarity when they pause. The encounters are brief but memorable, leaving a lingering impression that the camp is aware of each person and that the phenomena are intentional, rather than random or coincidental. Blackroot Camp preserves its history. The camp structures, old docks, and weathered cabins bear silent witness to the passage of time. Many believe that the figures and sounds are echoes of past events, memories of lives once present along the water. The chanting, shadows, and figures are a reminder that history remains alive in the place, lingering in the air, water, and trees. Each visitor feels a connection to that past, even when it is fragmented and mysterious. The lasting impression. Blackroot Camp leaves visitors with a sense of wonder and unease. The black water, floating figures, and faint chanting combine into an immersive experience that touches the senses and imagination. As the night progresses, the fog thickens, the moonlight dances across the water, and figures continue to appear and vanish. Visitors move carefully, aware that every step, every glance, and every sound may be observed by something beyond the ordinary. Blackroot Camp remains a living memory. The camp waits silently along the blackened water. Figures glide across the surface. Shadows move among the trees. The chanting drifts over the river in a haunting rhythmic cadence. Those who leave carry the memory of the black water, the pale figures and the whispers in the wind. The experience lingers, a reminder that Blackroot Camp is more than a place, it is a presence. A living, breathing landscape of mystery and unseen watchers. Hollow Water Camp rests above a shallow marsh, its wooden planks stretching over dark, still waters. By day, the sun glints off the surface, reflecting the weathered structures and the swaying reeds. Canoes lie idle, and fishing gear leans forgotten against the railings. The camp appears tranquil, almost serene, yet there is an undercurrent of unease, a sense that the marsh itself holds memories and movements invisible to the untrained eye. As dusk falls, the atmosphere changes. Shadows deepen across the water. And the fog begins to rise from the marsh, curling around the pilings and drifting along the planks. Figures can sometimes be seen beneath the water's surface, their forms distorted by the ripples and the thickening mist. They do not move with the hurriedness of ordinary beings, but drift, slow and deliberate, as if observing everything above while remaining apart from the living world. Footsteps echo across the wooden planks, soft and irregular. They follow visitors as they walk, sometimes in time with their pace, sometimes lagging behind, creating a disorienting sense of presence. No one is visible, yet the sound persists, carrying through the still air and bouncing off the structures. The echoes create a feeling that the camp itself is alive, listening, and responding to the movements of those who wander through its pathways. The water contributes to the haunting quality of Hollow Water Camp. Ripples form where no wind touches the surface, and small splashes appear with no discernible source. Reflections shimmer unnaturally, hinting at forms beneath the surface. Visitors often report glimpsing figures just below the water, their shapes pale and indistinct, rising to the surface only to vanish when approached. The boundary between the natural and the supernatural blurs, leaving a lingering unease that follows each step. Lanterns, long unlit, sometimes appear along the planks. They glow faintly, casting wavering light across the marsh and the boards. No hand carries them, yet they move with purpose, illuminating pathways and edges as if to guide or observe, creating the impression of intent and awareness beyond human understanding. Visitors feel the gaze of something unseen, a consciousness embedded in the structures and waters of the camp. Whispers drift through the fog, faint and fragmented. They rise and fall with the wind, sometimes carrying names or indistinct syllables. The voices blend with natural sounds of the soft lapping of water, the creaking of planks, the rustle of reeds, making it impossible to determine whether they originate from the marsh, the structures, or the figures beneath the water. The experience is hypnotic and unsettling, drawing attention while evoking a sense of mystery and caution. Hollow Water Camp feels alive, yet not in the way living creatures animate the world. Every plank, every piling, every ripple seems to participate in a silent performance. Figures drift beneath the water, footsteps echo without origin. Lanterns light paths unseen, and whispers thread through the fog. The environment exists in a space between the visible and the hidden, where the ordinary is suspended and the unseen becomes tangible. Time behaves strangely in the camp. Moments stretch longer than expected, and footsteps or whispers persist even when motion has ceased. Shadows may cling to the boards or water longer than should be possible, fading slowly as if reluctant to depart. Visitors often sense a pull toward the planks or water, compelled to watch, yet hesitant to approach. Every detail reinforces the impression that Hollow Water Camp holds a memory, a life, and a presence that refuses to remain hidden. Each night at Hollow Water Camp is a story. Figures rise beneath the water. Footsteps echo along empty boards. Lanterns glow without hand, and whispers drift across the fog. The experience is both mesmerizing and disquieting. Those who leave carry the memory of a place existing simultaneously in the world of the living and the realm of the unseen. A camp where reality and the spectral overlap with every step. Hollow Water Camp is more than an abandoned site. It is a space where shadows drift beneath the water. Footsteps resonate in empty air. Whispers rise and fall. And the marsh itself seems aware of every movement. Visitors leave with a heightened sense of perception. Aware that what they experienced was both a part of the world they know and something beyond it. At the edge of the marsh, the camp endures. Figures move beneath the water. Footsteps echo along the boards. And whispers rise from the fog. Each visit is a journey into a space where the living encounter the presence of the unseen, a night at Hollow Water Camp that lingers long after the mist has dispersed and the water has returned to stillness. Blood Willow Landing rests quietly along a slow, winding river, its banks shaded by long, sweeping willow trees. By day, the landing seems serene, with water lapping gently at the roots and a soft breeze stirring the branches. Yet, as evening falls, the atmosphere transforms. As night descends, figures begin to appear along the water's edge. They crouch among the exposed roots, barely visible in the dim light, blending with the dark shapes of the trees. Their movements are deliberate, almost imperceptible, yet their presence is undeniably felt. Visitors report an overwhelming sensation of being watched, a quiet awareness that something is observing from the shadows. Whispers drift across the water, soft and indistinct at first, then clearer as the night grows darker. These sounds seem to come from all directions at once, weaving through the willows and across the surface of the river. Occasionally, soft laughter rises, delicate and fleeting, vanishing as quickly as it appears. The voices carry fragments of words, unintelligible yet intimate, as if they were meant for those who dare to linger near the landing. The willow trees themselves seem alive at night. Branches sway gently without wind, brushing against the water and the ground in a rhythm that mirrors the unseen figurisa movements. Their reflections in the river distort, creating shapes that shift and elongate as though reaching toward the landing. Those who pause to look too closely often feel a cold draft on their skin, a subtle reminder of the presence among the roots and shadows. Visitors often report glimpsing pale faces or partial forms moving between the roots and trunks. Sometimes the figures crouch low, watching silently. And at other moments they appear to glide along the banks. Their shapes are never fully clear. Always at the edge of perception, creating a sense of unease that grows with each passing minute. The landing seems to breathe with the presence of the unseen. As though the trees and water themselves participate in the haunting. The water plays its own role in the experience. Ripples appear without wind or disturbance, as though something beneath the surface is shifting just out of sight. Occasionally, faint reflections of the figures emerge in the river, only to vanish when approached. The landing becomes a space where reality and apparition overlap, leaving visitors uncertain of what is tangible and what is spectral. Soft laughter and whispers continue to echo, sometimes forming what seems like a conversation among the figures. The sounds move through the willows and across the water, drawing attention to corners of the landing where nothing visible exists. Some who have lingered too long report a sensation of being followed, of footsteps on soft earth or waterlogged soil just behind them, though the space remains empty. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena heightens the sense of mystery. Figures appear and vanish. And the whispering and laughter intertwine with the gentle sway of the trees. Every element of the willows, the river, the shadows, and the soundsa. The willows, the river, the shadows, and the soundsa work in concert to create an immersive and disquieting experience. Time itself seems altered, stretching and contracting. As visitors navigate the landing, uncertain of how long they have been present. Fog occasionally drifts in from the river, thickening the air and obscuring sight lines. Within the fog, the figures and shapes become more elusive, flickering in and out of perception. The whispers and laughter continue, magnified and distorted by the mist, wrapping the landing in an almost tangible atmosphere of anticipation. Some visitors describe a feeling of being gently tugged, pulled closer to the banks or the roots, though nothing visible makes contact. By the early hours of the morning, the landing often returns to its daytime stillness. The figures retreat, the whispers fade, and the laughter disappears. Yet, the impressions remain. Those who have walked the landing leave with a heightened awareness of their surroundings. A sense that they were observed, guided, and watched throughout the night. The river, the willows, and the soil hold the memory of the night's events. A lingering presence that continues to ripple long after departure. Blood Willow Landing endures as a place where nature and the supernatural intertwine. The figures crouching among the roots, the whispers and laughter, the gentle swaying of the willows, and the shifting reflections in the river create a fully immersive environment. Visitors leave with the knowledge that they have entered a space where ordinary rules do not apply, and where unseen presences maintain a quiet, persistent watch over the landing throughout the night. Phantom Creek Camp rests along the edges of a winding creek, its waters dark and slow-moving, reflecting the trees and sky with an unsettling stillness. The camp is small, with weathered piers stretching into the water and cabins scattered along the banks. At first glance, it seems a peaceful place, a retreat for those seeking quiet and solitude. Yet, as night falls, the atmosphere transforms. The air grows heavy with mist that drifts off the creek and curls through the trees, wrapping the camp in a soft, gray shroud. Within this fog, visitors report seeing things that defy explanation. Lanterns appear along the piers with no one holding them. The lanterns glow with a faint, flickering light, casting long reflections across the water. The lanterns seem to move of their own accord, swinging gently as though stirred by invisible hands. Walkers on the piers feel their warmth, only to find nothing nearby. The soft illumination creates shadows that stretch unnaturally across the cabins and water, shapes that seem alive yet vanish when approached. Each lantern appears deliberately placed, guiding or observing, though for what purpose no one can discern. Figures rise from the creek at night. They emerge slowly from the water, pale and ghostly, half-formed in the mist. Observers often see their outlines first, drifting along the creek's surface, moving without sound or urgency. Their forms are fleeting, sometimes vanishing entirely as the mist shifts. Yet the presence remains undeniable. Some campers report that these figures linger near the piers or drift along the water's edge. Always watching, never speaking. Yet conveying a sense of awareness, as if the creek itself is alive and sentient. Shadows move independently of the landscape. Trees cast twisted, shifting silhouettes that do not align with the moonlight. Branches bend where there is no wind. Walkways and cabins are outlined with shapes that twist and stretch unnaturally, disappearing when directly observed. Visitors notice the shadows often precede or follow them along paths, moving with intent and purpose, as though the camp has an unseen guide. The interplay between light and shadow creates an environment where perception is constantly challenged, leaving a lingering feeling of unease that persists long after the initial observation. The soundscape of Phantom Creek Camp is equally strange. The creek itself seems to carry whispers that rise from the water at night. Ripples echo with soft, rhythmic pulses, blending with distant creaks from the piers. Visitors sometimes hear footsteps on the wooden planks of the docks, yet when they turn, they see only fog and water. Occasionally, a faint splash or ripple follows, as though something unseen has moved beneath the surface. Even wind carries subtle murmurs, drifting through the cabins and tents, blurring the line between nature and something far less tangible. Fog alters the perception of space. Trails between the cabins and along the piers shift under its weight. Familiar paths appear longer or shorter. And the mist obscures landmarks, making it easy to lose orientation. Figures rise suddenly from the water or appear behind the mist. And lanterns that seemed distant can appear near in moments. The interplay between fog, light, and shadow transforms the camp into a place where ordinary distances and proportions no longer apply. Each step through the mist is an exercise in alertness, a reminder that perception here is unreliable. The feeling of being observed is constant. Visitors describe the sensation that eyes follow them from the water, from the trees, and from the shadows themselves. Even when the creek is calm and the piers are empty, a lingering awareness remains. The figures in the mist, the lanterns on the docks, and the moving shadows combine to create a sense of presence that is physical and psychological. Those who spend time here report heightened senses, a careful attention to every sound, ripple, and movement, as if the camp itself requires acknowledgement. At night, the creek becomes a stage for subtle phenomena. Figures may rise or drift along its surface, lanterns light the piers with no explanation. And shadows slither independently of their sources. The mist conceals and reveals in equal measure, shaping perception and creating a sense of otherworldly fluidity. Campers often pause to watch the creek, mesmerized by its unnatural calm and the figures it hosts. The quiet and the fog intensify awareness, producing a blend of curiosity, fascination, and trepidation that permeates every step taken along the banks. The experience of Phantom Creek Camp leaves a lasting impression. Visitors often recount fleeting glimpses of figures emerging from the creek, shadows moving with intent, lanterns that light the piers without hands. Sounds echo and ripple through the mist, carrying whispers and footsteps. That seem to respond to presence. The environment is immersive, shaping perception and creating an enduring sense of the unknown. Those who leave do so with memories that linger, of figures, of shadows, and of a creek that watches silently. Phantom Creek Camp endures as a place where water, fog, and shadow converge. The lanterns along the piers, the figures rising from the creek, and the shifting shadows combine to create an atmosphere that is simultaneously beautiful and unsettling. Visitors feel a constant interaction with the environment, aware of unseen eyes and touches. Every visit reinforces the perception that this camp is more than a simple retreat, it is a place where the natural and the supernatural coexist, observed in quiet, deliberate balance. For those who return, the phenomena remain consistent. Lanterns appear on empty piers, shadows twist along the banks, and figures drift silently in the water. Each night reinforces the sense that the creek, the mist, and the camp itself are alive with presence, shaping perception and experience. Phantom Creek Camp remains a location of subtle mystery, where light, shadow, and water collaborate to create a landscape both captivating and unnerving. Phantom Creek Camp remains a location of subtle mystery, where light, shadow, and water collaborate to create a landscape both captivating and unnerving. Visitors leave Phantom Creek Camp transformed, carrying memories of floating figures, independent shadows and lanterns that glow without source. The fog and the creek linger in thought long after departure. And the subtle touches, whispers, and movements remain embedded in memory. Phantom Creek Camp is a place where perception is fluid, where the ordinary blends with the extraordinary, and where the water's edge holds mysteries that are visible only to those who venture close enough to witness. Darkwater Bayou Camp sits in a remote corner of the bayou, shrouded in thick mist that drifts across the water and weaves among the stilted cabins. The stillness of the place is deceptive. At night, the bayou transforms into a realm of shadows and whispers, where the line between the living and the spectral blurs. Figures rise from the water, pale and silent, moving without sound as they glide past piers and docks. Their forms are fleeting, appearing for a heartbeat and vanishing as if swallowed by the darkness itself. Lanterns float along the boardwalks and among the cabins, their soft glow illuminating the fog in an otherworldly haze. Visitors often feel an immediate sense of unease as they move along the water's edge, the dim lights flickering across the wooden planks and reflecting in ripples that seem almost alive. The sounds of the bayou add to the disorientation. Footsteps echo along empty boardwalks, matching the pace of visitors yet originating from nowhere. Whispers drift through the humid air, their words incomprehensible but undeniably present. Some hear soft laughter carried on the wind, playful and chilling at the same time. The combination of sight and sound creates a sensation that the camp itself is aware of their presence, observing their movements and responding in subtle, unnerving ways. The water seems to pulse with life. Those who navigate the narrow channels in small boats often describe an uncanny sensation beneath the hull, a rhythmic shifting as if something beneath the surface is moving in tandem with their passage. Ripples form without wind, small eddies appear where none should exist, and reflections distort unnaturally in the lantern light. Some say the water has memory, that it remembers the lives lost and the tragedies that have unfolded along these shores, manifesting in the movements that seem alive and deliberate. Figures appear in unexpected places. A pale silhouette crosses a pier, or a shape rises just above the water's surface, observing silently. These figures do not speak, do not gesture, yet their presence is keenly felt. They vanish when approached, leaving only the lingering impression that they were never fully corporeal, yet somehow undeniable. The environment is layered with sensations. Fog thickens unpredictably, rolling over the water and into the gaps between cabins, reducing visibility to mere inches. Moonlight pierces the mist in shafts, illuminating sudden forms before plunging them back into darkness. The air carries the damp, earthy scent of the bayou, mingled with faint, unexplained odors that seem to cling to visitors long after leaving the camp. Every sense is heightened, each sound amplified, each shadow scrutinized for movement. Visitors describe repeated patterns. Figures rise from the water at the same locations. Lanterns drift along familiar paths. Footsteps echo at regular intervals along the piers. The whispers often follow a rhythm, increasing in intensity as someone approaches certain areas, fading as they depart. These repeated occurrences suggest purpose. An intelligence behind the phenomena makes the experience deeply unsettling and immersive. The psychological effect is profound. Many feel watched even when no figure is visible, sensing eyes upon them from the mist or beneath the water. The combination of visual anomalies, ghostly sounds, and the living presence of the bayou creates a tension that grows the longer one remains. Even the most seasoned visitors find themselves glancing over shoulders, pausing at shadows, and questioning whether the sensations are real or imagined. History seems embedded in the camp itself. The cabins, piers, and boardwalks are aged and weathered, bearing silent witness to countless nights of strange occurrences. Some believe that the spirits and phenomena are echoes of the lives once tied to this place, remnants of past tragedies and forgotten events that remain tied to the landscape. The figures, the lights, and the whispers may be memories made manifest, replaying in an endless nocturnal cycle for anyone who dares to enter. Remnants of past tragedies and forgotten events that remain tied to the landscape. The night is an ever-shifting theater. Fog, moonlight, and water merge into a dynamic scene, where forms emerge, interact, and vanish. Lanterns move unpredictably, shadows glide across surfaces without discernible cause. And the bayou itself seems to breathe and respond. Visitors report that no two nights are alike. And even returning to familiar spots yields new and unexpected encounters. Encounters are subtle and deliberate. Lanterns drift closer when a visitor pauses. Footsteps echo in rhythm with their own. And shadows appear in peripheral vision. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed. The phenomenon is never overtly aggressive but persistently intrusive, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Those who leave describe an eerie sense of presence lingering long after the camp disappears behind them, as if the spirits or the water have followed, creating a sensation of being observed and accompanied. Darkwater Bayou Camp remains a living, breathing space of mystery. Figures continue to rise from the water. Whispers drift through the mist. The water's surface shifts and moves. The boardwalks creak under invisible weight. And every corner of the camp seems attuned to those who enter. Visitors leave with impressions that linger. Memories of pale shapes, floating lights, and the sound of something beyond comprehension moving just beneath the surface. Even in daylight, the camp exudes a quiet, uneasy presence. Shadows cling to the corners, remnants of nighttime movement seem to linger in the water and on the piers. The memory of what has been seen and heard remains, drawing curiosity and caution alike. Darkwater Bayou Camp is more than a place, it is a threshold between the world of the living and the unseen, a space where history, nature, and the spectral converge in haunting harmony. Those who approach understand that the bayou itself is alive, holding memory and presence in equal measure. Figures rise, lanterns drift, water shifts, and whispers continue. Each visit is unique, yet each confirms the undeniable truth: Darkwater Bayou Camp is a place where the veil between the ordinary and the supernatural is thin. And those who enter carry the memory of its haunting long after they have gone. Thank you, my dear friend, for venturing with me tonight through the haunted bayou fishing camps of Louisiana. These waters are more than black and still. They are alive with memories, shadows, and spirits that refuse to rest. If you ever travel along the bayou at night, and fog drifts low across the water, or shadows move among the piers, or lanterns appear swinging in the mist, remember this. Not every shadow is harmless. Not every plank is safe. And not every presence belongs to this world. Move carefully. Keep your lanterns close. And may the spirits of the bayou leave you to row safely back to shore. Until our next haunted journey, my dear friend.